The other thing is ending water catchment systems in subdivisions. If you want a water catchment system, you should be able to have it. But I think for the safety of rat and lungworm disease and all of these things, I think the county needs to take a fully vested interest in creating water supply for all of the subdivisions island-wide. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Waugh. The next question actually is going to go to you first because you mentioned rat lungworm disease. Wasn't planning to give you this question first, but here we go. This is going to be a 90-second question and going to all of you. And this is an issue that hasn't really been addressed by anybody at a candidate forum that I've heard yet. Rat lungworm disease is something that is a very horrible disease. It's here on our island, and it is way worse than dengue, for example, because you can die from it or you can be left neurologically impaired. And the state legislature and the State Department of Health right now have declined to fund appropriate education and research on this. Most of which, the research, by the way, most of it's done right here at UH Hilo. We're the ones that are leading the charge on this because we are the island that has it. This is not technically the county's kuleana, but given that the state seems to be passing the buck or just not doing anything on this, it is impacting Hawaii County's people. So you as mayor, each one of you, talk about what approach you would take as mayor. If you think this is something the county should take on, what exactly would you do? 90 seconds to deal with rat lungworm disease.
Well, doesn't the state always pass the buck on to the county? Whenever it feels like it's going to be personally responsible and faced with liability issues, they're going to pass it to the county. I think Hawaii County needs to take an active role in this, especially in the realm of education first. Everybody wants free water, but here's the thing. You don't have that capability to sanitize your own water and disinfect it. So I think we really need to, education first, and again, it goes back to ending water catchment systems in subdivisions. I think we pay enough property taxes to afford that luxury, which is a basic human right, is water. Thank you.
Thank you. And I just want to mention, for any of you who don't know much about rat lungworm disease, which is predominant on the east side of the island but exists on the west side of the island, it typically happens when a slug that has eaten rat feces crawls across lettuce and leaves one of his, the slugs that do this are teeny, tiny little slugs, and one can easily miss it when you're washing, if you don't really wash your lettuce really well. If you wash your lettuce really well, it's absolutely no problem. So it's something that you can ingest accidentally and not even realize you did it. So, and it is a problem. State Department of Health keeps statistics, but they can only keep a statistic if the doctor knows you actually had it. And it's not always easy to tell if you have it. So I just wanted to give you a little more background on it because it's a complicated disease. Dr. Hapai, you're going to go next on this question, followed by Ms. McCandless. 90 seconds, please, your approach.
Okay, one of the benefits of getting older is you can see whether things have been accomplished or not over a period of time. In 1980, as a young graduate student, I helped to co-author the Hawaii Nature Study program. And at that time, this program was already encouraging teachers and children to wash their hands, to not touch snails. The rat lungworm was already here. And at that time, they had already brought in biological control agents, cannibal snails, to help take care of this. But as I read it again, I realized that it didn't do so well, and that was kind of it, right? So one of the things I'd like to say is we need to have stronger control. When organisms come in, we have to handle them immediately. You know, whether it's plant, animal, person. We have to handle it immediately because often it doesn't go away. And this is what I'm finding today. So what I would see is an educational campaign. I'd like to see rat cards at the airports, at the docks, in the hotels. I would like to see magnets on the refrigerators that little kids can take a look at and move around and say, oh, I gotta wash my hands, I handled a snail. But different types of science curriculum that we can bring in and actually educate people. So, and also this could be accomplished at our emergency preparedness fairs because this is part of safety.
Thank you very much. Shannon McCandless, followed by Eric Drake Weinert Jr.
Thank you, Sherry, for this question. So a little bit more information so that you folks know there's actually not a cure for rat lungworm disease. That's something that we're still researching on. And so the main thing, first and foremost, is education. It's getting the word out there. One is in literature. Another could be actually as far as public service announcements, even if we're not running them as often, because it's not something that we really want to be alarming our tourists or other people about, but at least so that way our local people know about it. Another thing that we could do actually is because rat lungworm disease was found on the east side, because of the climate, it breeds it a lot better. And it was specifically found out in Pahoa in Paradise Park. But and through all the other forms that we've been through, if you look at Pahoa, we haven't been doing a good job as a county in making sure that that area, which is larger than Honolulu, has a population that's growing quicker than any other location, is really getting the services that they need. And I say this because if we start looking at that community and actually helping to better plan the community and getting it its resources that they need, we can begin to actively mitigate it from the county efforts, and then as well incorporate other entities as well as the state, even though they're not actively doing something, because the county is putting the effort and the resources into accomplishing it. Mahalo.
Thank you. Eric Drake Weinert Jr. and followed by Paul Bryant.
Mahalo for this question, because rat lungworm is a big concern for everyone here on this island. And this is what I'm talking about when I talk about ecology, because rat lungworm is actually a nematode, which is a very small worm that goes through its life cycle through various animals, the rat and also the slug. And this microorganism, oftentimes when we talk about ecology, we only talk about the bad things coming to attack us. And in this case, rat lungworm is one of these bad guys. But if you have a bunch of bad guys and no good guys, the bad guys will run amok and take over, your whole land. But if you have a bunch of really good guys out there, they'll be able to stop the bad guys coming in and to subdue them and to create the environment that is safe and clean. And just like how we have bad people here in Hilo, we have cops to come and keep them under control. And in a similar sense, along the education of this ecology, of putting our police, these micro police, back into our soil. So using these technologies and to really understand on a deep level our ecology, not just to get attacked by the good guys, but to work or attacked by the bad guys, but work proactively with the good guys. So putting good microorganisms in our soils so we don't get sick. That's my solution, to educate that way. Mahalo.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Bryant, followed by Mr. Hoffman. 90 seconds, please.
Well, I certainly think it's appropriate for the county to be involved, because the county is the first line of defense upon all these invasive situations that we have, or infectious situations that we're faced by. As Drake was just saying, it is a nematode, but it's not the same as leptospirosis, which comes from rat urine and goes into the water supply. So I think there's a little confusion here that rat lung worm disease and leptospirosis, one is waterborne, the other is actually physically contaminated in your food line. So taking an educational bent is probably the smartest thing. And I can't tell you that education does work, because it's rather apparent that we've reached the children in the younger grade classes and started to tell them about recycling, and all of a sudden they're telling their parents. That's the best way to get to the parents, because most of the parents don't pay any attention. So if the kids speak up to them, then they do. Mom, I don't think you should smoke. Mom, I think that goes in the recycle. Dad, maybe you should put your beer cans over there because we can get money for them. That kind of thing. Well, the same thing with rat lung disease. We need to be very careful in washing our greens and whatnot, and there's an end to that from that perspective. I don't know about Drake's other ideas, but I'd rather look at them rather seriously, for sure.
And now to Mr. Hoffman. If this should be a mayor issue, given that it's actually technically the responsibility of the state, how would you handle this? 90 seconds, rat lungworm disease, and you will be followed by Mr. Tomashiro.
Well, I certainly think it's appropriate for the county to be involved, because the county is the first line of defense upon all these invasive situations that we have, or infectious situations that we're faced by. As Drake was just saying, it is a nematode, but it's not the same as leptospirosis, which comes from rat urine and goes into the water supply. So I think there's a little confusion here that
Anytime that the state or the university won't take responsibility and be aggressive in trying to attack these types of problems, then clearly it's an issue that the mayor will and must handle in the best way that he can. As your mayor, and has or have already been spoken, I certainly believe public outreach is one of the most important components of any type of an issue that would affect rat lungworm disease for us. Clearly, though, as I mentioned before, my program and emphasis on agriculture, clearly I must, as your mayor, make certain that I handle this issue, and I'm certainly not going to wait for the state or other people to try to fund or help us out. It's here now. It should have been handled in a number of different ways. I'm astonished that the university for which I served on the Board of Regents hasn't done more in this particular effort. I'd like to see, for instance, the county go after federal and state grants in order to at least be able to have the resources without taxing ourselves anymore in order to provide a reasonable program and outreach for this effort. We need technical expertise here, ladies and gentlemen, on this issue, and I, as your mayor, will make certain that we get it, and we get it quickly.
Thank you, Mr. Hoffman. I'd like to go now to Jean Tomashiro to address the issue, understanding that the primary research right now is being done at UH-ELO by Dr. Susan Jarvie, and I'd like to give her a shout out and credit because she's the one that's really looking at this particular issue. Thank you so much to her. Mr. Tomashiro, you're next, followed by Mr. Lau. 90 seconds.
Sure, thank you. Rat lungworm disease, anything that happens on our INA is our responsibility. And I like what Drake said in regards to biological and ecologically minded natural systems to create beneficial environments for nature to do its thing in a very positive and natural environment. When we add chemicals that we don't even want onto our INA, it disrupts the natural balance of the INA and, of course, of our own bodies. And so we need to look at the wisdom and the knowledge that is existent in this room and beyond regarding natural healing techniques. Education and media is a key. We could have events. And now this is something that I heard also, Sherry, when you said, if you wash your lettuce well, no worries. Okay, so that's pretty simple. You know, educate people to take responsibility to be more conscious of their natural surroundings and then how to take care of yourself in that light. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tomashiro.
In this particular case, certainly the mayor has to step up and take action. But at the same time, not letting the state or any other person or any other entity get away with it. One has to be responsible for their area of responsibility. And what I would do is very similar to what happened with the dengue. It was really a DOH call. But we felt that they weren't as active, as progressive as it should be. And so we made some calls to the governor, to the department director of DOH, to Sarah Park, and says, we got to step it up. And what we encouraged is we had community meetings, and that's education, I think, is very important. But take the message out to the community and have the community hear these experts and have the experts listen to the community and the questions. But these community meetings is not one time. It needs to be ongoing to continue to educate and re-educate the people about this very serious matter at hand. Again, the state has the expertise. The county has to hold these people to the fire, and the mayor has that responsibility and has the power to hold them to the fire and not let them get away on behalf of the people of the state.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lau. Rat lungworm disease is a problem here on Hawaii Island, most especially, although technically the State Department of Health and the state legislature should be stepping in. They have declined to fund the existing research and education. So given that it's an issue on Hawaii Island, should the mayor step in? What should the county do? Give us your thoughts. 90 seconds, please.
Okay, thank you. I've been a farmer in Paneawa, Hawaiian Homes Land for over 35 years now. us farmers raise beans, cucumbers, lettuce, what have you, everything what you're eating at KTA, Safeway, and all these places. We make sure all the items that we have is washed, clean, before we take it to the produce department of each store or the produce. What happened with this rat thing, what happened in the Puna side, it's just you have to wash your items, whether you buy it from whatever store, clean it out, okay, clean it out. And you know, the county don't have really much time to, the county's job is to provide police, fire, and recreation, and road maintenance and everything. If we're gonna have problems, so-called expert, don't give me a, expert is not expert. They've been working on all of these, even the mosquito problem, the rat worm problem. It's you and you, common sense, just use common sense. Because the county, it's so busy trying to take care of the other facilities that provide services to you. And it's need to be taken care of by you, not the county.
Thank you. And Mr. Kim?
I have an unfair advantage over all the panel members simply because I've been involved in this now for almost a year. This is because of a friend of mine, a registered nurse, contacted Rat Lung. And the suffering that she went through and still going through, this is months later, it's just horrible. I think some of you may have read in the paper where a person even committed suicide because of the pain in regards to how long this lasts. As a cure is something, a parasitic worm within your system has just got to die and work itself out. What we did was contact the governor's liaison here, Will Okabe, and asked them, to see what could be done. And what has been done so far is this. A work group has been established. The governor has publicized the fact that he's identified certain people within the state of expertise, professionals, and the people of this island, Ms. Jarvie, the Hilo Medical Center doctor who is known to be the expert on treatment. And we identified a 4-step program that needs to be done that is of coordination of treatment and diagnosis. Even that is in the infancy stage of research in regards to prevention and, again, of education to public. And I cannot lay silent in regards to say that just washing your vegetables will address the problem. The research done so far is that people can catch it through their catchment tank. So this is complicated.
Thank you, Mr. Kim. And that is a good point. You can catch it through your catchment tank, what they believe is based on the research. And so finally we go with the question to Daniel Cunningham. 90 seconds, please.
You're not going to solve a problem you don't understand. When I explain to you what I'm going to do, then perhaps you'll comprehend the problem is government. If you're going to raise hands, and I'll get back to this rat worm. Raise your hands, people who understand the Federal Reserve is private, not public, and there's a problem with that. Just raise your hands if you looked in and you have some serious problems about
Mr. Cunningham, we're talking rat lungworm disease.
Okay, I'm talking about utilities. And the problem is there's no fresh water to these people, and they're getting sick because they don't have fresh water to clean up their vegetables because they're poor, and they've got catchment. They don't have, okay. So we need a public utility, not private, okay? This geothermal is destroying the diamonds and all of the things that are being produced. You could do a passive geothermal system that's publicly owned, not private, and create jobs through 3D printing. We can create an electric and a water company.
Mr. Cunningham, as I explained in the briefing, we would appreciate it if you would stick to the question.
And through publicly owned utilities, we can have fresh water for everybody cheap. The problem is it's so expensive. Hawaii Water and Electric are their best customers. I was told that. They're the best customers, and it's a private enterprise, and that's why the cost of utilities is so expensive here, and people don't have fresh water because it's private. It has to be public, or it's not going to work, people. There's an agenda here to dumb this down. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cunningham.
Thank you.
The next question is...